Kevin Durant has just been traded to the Houston Rockets in a huge blockbuster deal, the second big deal that we've had this offseason. This trade has been rumored to happen for a while. KD said that Houston has been one of his preferred destinations, and of course he wants out of Phoenix, and now the trade has officially gone through. Won't take effect until the official offseason starts July 6th, but it's all been agreed upon. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Court Vision. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what the KD trade does for the Houston Rockets. Does it make them contenders? What's their ceiling like? The full trade, for those of you who haven't seen it, the Houston Rockets are going to receive Kevin Durant in exchange for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the 10th overall pick this year, and then 5 second-round picks. Talking about the package, the value, the GM kind of stuff, that's not really my bag. I'm just going to talk about what this does for the Rockets on the court. And before I say anything else, I'm not going to talk about the Suns at all in this video. They've got a lot more that they're working on, obviously, this offseason that's going to give us more of a clear look about what their plans are, what their philosophy is heading into next season, and I think they really deserve their own video when those moves come. But moving into this trade, I think KD is a great fit for Houston, and I think Houston is a great fit for KD. The team around him puts him in position to do what he does best without asking him to do too much outside of that, and I think what he can do, his skills, his abilities on the floor, make him perfect for filling some of the biggest holes that Houston has had this last season. Does this make them a contender? Let's run down my thoughts. Jumping right into it, the immediate thing that you see when you see this trade is that KD is going to bring plenty of half-court self-creation and spacing that this Houston team desperately needs. Houston's offense in the half court was really bad this year, especially in the playoffs. I think it was really the main reason they lost to the Warriors in round one is they just don't have that half court scoring punch. In the regular season, this is per Cleaning the Glass, they had a 93.2 half court offensive rating, which is 22nd in the league in the regular season. Not very good. And then in the playoffs, it was 92.4 half court offensive rating. It was a small sample size, just 7 games against a good defensive team. But it's pretty clear to me that they just didn't have reliable ways to get buckets outside of their transition offense. They were relying on Alperen Sengun's post scoring and, in that playoff series, picking on some of Golden State's slower big men in high pick and roll, things like that. And neither of those are going to be ideal, reliable scoring options in a deeper postseason run. I think they only got to that game 7 off their defense and a couple huge shooting games from Fred VanVleet. And I think it's fair to say that they would have won that series with another more reliable half-court scoring option. And KD is exactly that, a reliable half-court scoring option. His off-the-dribble jumpers, his ability to just go get buckets is undeniable, even at this point in his career. He was a 93rd percentile isolation scorer this season, and he can get it done against pretty much any defensive coverage, which is exactly what this Houston Rockets team needs. The other big thing offensively is that KD is a capital S spacer, and Houston really needs that as well. Houston had the 3rd lowest three-point frequency and the 20th best three-point percentage as a team last year in the regular season. To put that in perspective, only one player in their core rotation of guys shot above league average from outside on any significant volume. They have some guys outside of that who can be shooters, obviously, like Fred had a down shooting year, for example, but their lack of spacing, their lack of threat from outside really makes life hard for their best players in guys like Sengun who really want to work inside the arc. KD's not going to fix everything immediately, but he's definitely going to help. He opens up a lot of space with his shooting gravity. He shot 43% from outside on over 6 attempts per game this season, not to mention his ability to be a scorer and three-point shooter off screens and attack closeouts. And that's going to lead nicely into my next point. KD fits super well next to Houston's other star players. And by other star players, I'm talking about Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson now with the departure of Jalen Green. His play style and what he does on the court are going to slot in very well next to those guys. His strengths and what he can do off the ball is going to complement them really well. Being such a lethal spot-up threat, 92nd percentile on spot-ups last year, who's able to, both be a catch-and-shoot guy and also able to attack a closeout next to, a great passing post player like Sengun and an athletic driving playmaker like Amen Thompson is going to clearly be a recipe for success. KD, in my opinion, is also the right archetype of player to be involved in, some kind of three-man actions with Amen and Sengun. He can be a pop threat as a screener. He can be a shooter out of any kind of screen action you want to run. He's able to attack switches both onto bigs, with his mobility, and he's able to attack switches onto smaller defenders with his ability to shoot over with his length and height. He just makes him a great complementary piece in actions with Amen and with Sengun, and maybe even with both of them. The other thing that makes me like Houston as a fit for KD specifically is they have so much ball handling and playmaking next to him, which was going to mean his usage and the amount that you're going to see him dribbling the ball is going to be much lower than in his tenure with the Suns. When he was there in Phoenix, it was a lot of dribbling. Their lack of a real threat at the point guard position and their lack of ball handling in general outside of him and Devin Booker meant that he had to do a disproportionate amount of work to create, scoring opportunities offensively, both for himself and other guys. Playmaking for other guys has never really been a core part of his game, even if he's capable at doing it when asked. But having, Amen, Fred VanVleet, Sengun next to him who can do all of this stuff is going to take some of that responsibility off of KD, allowing him to focus more on what he does best, which is just being a bucket. And you also have to consider KD's getting old. He's, I think, 37 now. Having other guys next to him, like those guys I mentioned before, who can be initiators and run actions while he can be more of an off-ball guy, is going to put a lot less strain on him offensively, which should help to alleviate some of the injury concerns you might have with him at this point in his career. Moving over to the other side of the ball, their defense is still going to be elite with KD on the floor. In this trade, they're losing Dillon Brooks, who is definitely a presence on ball. He's a great screen navigator. He's very physical, mobile enough to be a good wing defender. But Houston has plenty of guys who can step up and fill that void, be a ball stopper in their own way. Amen Thompson, obviously, going to be sliding into the starting lineup. Tari Eason, Jabari, all of these guys can be trusted both on ball and off ball to do what Dillon Brooks did. So I don't think they're losing much there with his departure. And then bringing in KD, who he was quietly a solid defender last year, especially as a help side guy. He can operate within Houston's defensive scheme very well, because Houston's scheme is very help heavy, very, we're going to throw bodies at you when you get in the paint. So he can be another guy who can step up on drives, just be long, be in the way, and fit very well into the scheme that Houston runs, even if he's not the same athlete defensively that he used to be, not the same shot blocker. Houston's also not going to need to ask him to do much at the point of attack, which is where you can maybe really exploit his weaknesses as a defender. And when he is on an island, defensively, he's still relatively mobile for his size, and that help-heavy scheme, again, is going to come in to do a lot to cover him up from the backline, cover up some of his weaknesses. So I think just the combination of what he can do as a help side guy and the defenders around him, their defense is still going to be elite. I have no concerns at all. And again, to consider some of those injury concerns, having less responsibility defensively than he did in Phoenix, where he was often the best defender on the court, is going to do a lot to avoid some of those injury concerns and manage his load for a playoff run that this team is going to want to make. Another point that I want to bring up is that this trade opens up a spot in the starting five for Amen Thompson, which is, I think, part of why the Rockets gave up Dillon Brooks, is to open up that starting spot for Amen Thompson. A lot of people last year even were calling for Amen to be a starter because of the impact he had defensively and how he's clearly capable of being a budding star offensively as well. After Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks are out, that means Amen and KD are going to slide into the starting lineup now. That's going to give him much more room to be a number one point of attack defender, as well as a ball handler on the offensive side with his downhill threat, with his passing out of his drives. And to go back to the defensive point, Amen being a starter is also going to be super helpful in making up defensively for the loss of Dillon Brooks. With all that being said, all of those things are reasons why I like this trade for Houston, but I think their ceiling as a team really depends on some of the internal improvements from some of the certain younger guys on this team, notably going to be Alperen Sengun, Reed Shepherd, and Amen Thompson. Question I have for Sengun is, can he develop his three ball and take just kind of a jump as a player in general? When it comes to the three ball thing, I know he's not really known to be a shooter at all thus far in his career, but in my opinion, there are some signs that I've seen that that three ball might be part of his game in the future. For certain stretches, especially in that first round playoff series, he was willing to take open threes that the defense was giving him, and he shot well on them for certain stretches. In that series, he shot about 38%. Obviously, very small sample size. He didn't shoot very well on the season as a whole, but the fact that he's willing to take those when they come to him, and the fact that he also takes a lot of mid-range shots, elbow jumpers, things like that, kind of indicate to me that the three ball might be something that's part of his game in the future. If he can develop that, become even a reasonable 32% three-point shooter next season, that's going to open up the spacing significantly for the rest of the team if he can be a stretch big. And it's also going to make their secret weapon double big lineup with him and Steven Adams on the floor together much more effective, because it means they have only one or two guys who are non-spacers rather than three even. Outside of the three ball, more developments in just his post scoring, his passing vision, his floater game, all the things that you associate with Sengun are also going to be huge in taking him up to the next level as a star that he has the potential to be. If he can make improvements in those areas, that's going to make him a more reliable scoring option in the playoffs, which is something that's really important for this team. Next guy I want to talk about is Reed Sheppard. Can he step into a role where he can be a creator off the bench or a spacer if he's playing alongside some of the starters? He was drafted to this team specifically for his shooting talent, but he spent a lot of last season with the G League team. Is he going to be able to step into a more significant role with the Rockets next season? If he can be a creation option as an off-the-dribble shooter in bench minutes, to give them another creation option with some of their starters off the floor, that would be spectacular for them. And then if he can be just a lights-out shooting threat next to their starters like Amen, like Sengun, their offense is going to benefit from that hugely, right? They're going to have another elite spacer and another scoring weapon that they can go to. The concern, obviously, is his defensive play and how small he is on that end of the floor. But if he can prove that his offense is there, and if he can prove that he deserves a spot in this rotation, his offense might make it worth playing him despite some of his defensive weaknesses. We all just have to see. If he can, take that leap and be a real rotation guy for this team, that's a huge boon for them. And now, Amen Thompson, this is arguably the most important thing for me, more even important even arguably than the KD trade itself, is can he become a star player and a lead ball handler for this team and develop some more versatile scoring skills? It's pretty clear to me that he's going to be a star player at some point in his career. The combination of his freaky athleticism, his slashing ability, his playmaking talent out of his drives, and then everything he does on the defensive end are all signs that he's going to be a world beater. The question is, how much of that star leap can he take going into this next season? Can he develop into more of a versatile scorer? The thing that is really holding him back from taking that star leap and being more of a lead ball handler is the fact that he's not really a super elite scorer yet. And he obviously has a scoring bag, don't get me wrong, but it's just not developed to that elite level where he has multiple things that he can go to, multiple spots he can get to quite yet. His athleticism really makes him a rim threat, and then he's shown signs of developing that mid-range or floater game, which if he can make that mid-range game, that floater game, a real reliable go-to option, even if his three ball doesn't develop at all, if he continues to be a non-three-point shooter at all, he still is going to become a serious threat with that combination of being able to score at the rim, having that in-between game, and then being an elite playmaker as well. Heading into next season, like I've said, he's going to be a starter. He's going to have more opportunity if he can take that jump as a scorer and be a high-volume creator on the ball. The sky is the limit for what you can do with this offense with him next to Sengun and KD. Kind of concluding my thoughts, I don't know if I'm ready to buy in on this Rockets team as a title favorite, but based on what they did last season, the success that they had, the addition of KD now, and the development of some of their younger players, I'd say they're definitely in the circle of top contenders in the Western Conference, top 2, 3 teams out west. I'm not going to predict them to make a finals run just yet. I mean, OKC is just too good. I think they're going to be back in the finals next year, regardless of what happens in Game 7 tonight. I'm not going to be shocked if they make the finals either. I think it's really all going to come down to whether Sengun and Amen Thompson can really take those next steps. That's all I've got in this video. Thank you if you watched all the way through. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more videos coming all throughout the off season and going into next season. I'm recording this just before, literally 2 hours before Game 7 of the finals tonight. So if you're seeing this, it might have already been over. Leave a comment as to what you thought about that. I'll probably make a video about this final series after it's all concluded. But that's all I've got. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.